All right, this is Richard White here again. Today what I'm going to tie is a very simple cased caddis that I like to talk about as a table scraps cased caddis, and you'll see why. Using a dubbing mix that I've put together for the body that's made up of bits of cut up deer hair and the fuzz from the base of a variety of feathers. This one is mostly olives and browns. You can do them in any color. So save all those things. So when you're trimming deer hair, save the trimmings. When you're pulling the fluff off the base of feathers, when you're pulling the fluff off the base of feathers, save that fluff. It's really useful stuff for dubbing. And you can make them up in any color, especially if you want that shaggy, buggy look that you get with a caddis case. Caddis cases can be made of, depending on the species of caddis, of pieces of leaf, bits of sand. They always look a little bit scruffy. They're always very well camouflaged to the bottom. They're picking up things that are in the environment and using them to make their case, and that's what gives it the camouflage look. So in this case, I'm using a longer shanked jig hook. This one is a Fulling Mill 5130. Any long shank jig hook should work. This is a size 14. I have a 4mm slotted bead on here. The slotted bead is preferable because it's easier to get it to sit up very close to the hook eye. And basically start my thread as I would for any other fly. Run the thread down the body all the way to the bend, because we want to use the length of this shank, because generally the case on a caddis is long and fairly slender, if very shaggy. So I'm going to get all the way to the back. Then I need to make a dubbing loop. So I'm going to draw out my thread. Actually, I'm going to do it a different way. It's a little easier. I bring my thread forward, draw out the thread. I have, I don't know, about a little bit more inches. Then I'm going to sort of wrap back over that doubled over thread so it's not going anywhere and it will stay together. Then I can bring my thread almost all the way up to the bead. Then I can use a dubbing spinner that I can just lock in, and that will hold the loop very slightly open. I will then get my dubbing. You could use dubbing wax or not, your choice, depends on your thread. And now this dubbing is pretty shaggy, sloppy stuff. And if you look at it, you'll see there's deer hair, there's fluff from the base of leaves. And I'm just going to lay this into the loop. And I'm going to pretty much fill up my dubbing loop and see if I have the right amount. It takes a little practice to get the amount just right. Sometimes you get a little too much, sometimes too little. But again, since this dubbing is made from scraps of stuff you would otherwise throw away, although you could just cut stuff off that you already have, you really don't mind if you waste a little bit of it, because it's stuff you've probably been throwing away for years anyway. So again, saving all that scrap, much of it can be used. So find uses for it. I'm going to tighten that up just a little bit so I can get a bit more in. I'm going to need a little bit longer dubbing loop to fill this up. And if anything, a little bit more as you get further down, just to get it a little bit thicker, although you are going to have to do a lot of work on this after the fact, a little bit of surgery to get this the way you want it. So I'm going to move that up, spin my dubbing loop, my dubbing twister, let that start working its way up till I get a nice brush. Then I'm going to use a pair of hackle pliers to grab the thread, slide the loop off of the dubbing twister, and now I'm just going to start twisting, winding this on just like it was some big, ugly, sloppy hackle. You know, I'll trying not to bind some of these down, but I'm not worrying too much about it. You know, I'm not really worrying about pushing it back as though it were a hackle, because the goal here is to cover the shank as much as possible. I'm going to leave a little space at the front, cover the shank with all this material, and I'm pretty close to the front now, so I'm going to tie that off, leaving a little gap. Right now it just looks like a very sloppy mess, and that's fine. Cut off the loop. At this point, I'm going to put a half hitch in so that my thread doesn't fall off, and because this is going to be the easiest time to trim back this body a little bit. So I'm going to go around and get off most of the really wild long stuff. You know, a little bit thinner towards the rear than towards the front. But a little shaggy is a good thing, because they've just, all the caddis are doing is picking up stuff from the environment and building a case with a sort of a silk-like secretion that they have. And that silk-like secretion should not come as a huge surprise, because caddises are actually, their nearest relatives are moths and butterflies. All right, so now I need a little bit of, before I put in the dubbing, I'm going to put in, I have here just a very inexpensive India hen, and so I'll get a feather here just so I can get some legs on this. And which feather color do I want here? These are nice because they've got many different colors on the same feathers. So yeah, I like that one. So if I can get that feather off, come on, one at a time. Whoops. And I broke off the tip, but that's okay. There's more than enough feather here. Strip the base. Again, I want this pretty soft. Now I'm going to tie this in the opposite direction. Often with caddis, the legs will kind of hook a little bit more forward when they're just sticking out of their case. So instead of tying it in the usual way with the concave side towards the rear, I'm going to tie it in with the concave side toward the front of the fly. Let me shorten up my thread a little bit so I get better control. Let me get this in the right position. Tying it in at 90-degree angle. Figure eights over the base of that feather stem. Bind the rest of the stem a little bit back, because I'm going to want to put dubbing both in front of and behind that feather. Now, dubbing, the part of the body you normally see on a cased caddis is either that's sticking out, if you will, a peaking caddis, is usually either green or white. In this case, I'll use white. It has a little flash in it. This is a laser yarn. So it's white with just a bit of flash. Don't need very much here, because I'm only doing a small area. So I dub this on, and then we will see how that looks. Some behind the feather, a little bit in front of the feather, Notice the diameter is slightly smaller than the diameter of the rest of the body, which is appropriate because this is the part that's sticking out. Then use either my hackle pliers or just my fingers to wind on just a few turns of hackle to represent the legs. Doesn't take much. Tie that off into the space right behind the bead. Clip off any remaining part of the feathers. Now, again, remember this is going to fish upside down, so I'm going to pull more of these fibers down towards what will be the underside of the fly, and try to encourage them slightly forward. And I want just a little bit more of the dubbing, since I've hidden some of that dubbing under the feather. So I want a little more of the white to show. So I will add just a little more dubbing right in there. Then I can whip finish. And head cement really isn't very important when you're tying it on a jig hook like this, because the thread is thoroughly buried and hidden and not accessible to the sharp little fish teeth. And then you can look at whether there's any parts you want to brush out or clip off, do any fine surgery for the appearance of your fly. And of course, the problem with doing that is you can get carried away and trim away too much. It's just a matter of figuring it out as you go. And what you end up with is a very simple little cased caddis. They're quick to tie, they're easy to tie, they're inexpensive to tie. And since to fish these properly, you really do need to bounce them down the bottom. Having something that's simple, fast, and inexpensive is okay, because you will lose some of these. Even with a jig hook, you will hang up. You'll get the bead stuck between rocks, but you definitely want to fish this on the bottom. I hope that proves useful. Once again, that's the Table Scraps Cased Caddis. And I hope that's something you enjoy and get a chance to use. And I'd appreciate any comments or questions you have. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. So would a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Again, Richard White here, White Heart Fly Tying. And have a good day. Bye-bye.